Welcome to Building a Foundation of Multiplication. Today we will discuss what you can do to help your students master multiplication. As we know, it is a process and it takes time before we can build this skill. So what can we do to help our students succeed in multiplication? Well, let's think. How to begin? First, we want to make sure we build number awareness with our students. Have conversations with the students about the math they see each day in their lives. Where do we see numbers around us? When do we use math? Ask the students to pay attention to the different situations in which they're using math outside the math classroom. Second, make sure the students have addition fluency. As we know, multiplication is built upon addition. We need to make sure that the students have a strong foundation of addition. We add all the time, but make sure, can the students automatically add? If a student is struggling with addition, they may not be ready to look at the multiplication. So work on those addition skills to make sure that the students feel confident and strong and can automatically add with many different facts. Finally, establish multiplicative thinking. You want the students to say, okay, I'm adding equal groups. Can I add these equal groups quickly? Because when they start to see that the numbers they are adding are equal and they're in groups and they can find a quicker way, they are ready to begin to discuss multiplication and see that multiplication is repeated addition. So, multiplication defined? Well, you want to explain to the students that multiplication is a quicker way of adding the same number. 4 times 3, 4 groups of 3, 4 multiplied by 3, 4 made 3 times bigger. This is all multiplication, and you want the students to understand the process that they are going to go through. But you can't just jump into the facts. There are some basic skills that the students need to understand before learning the facts. First, have the students draw pictures and create arrays so they can see the groups in front of them. Over here on the right-hand side, there is a picture of 4 bags with 3 marbles each. So the students have 4 groups of 3. You can then go on to have them see that they can add 3 4 times. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. This brings them to the repeated addition and takes them beyond the basic step when they would just count the marbles in the bags. Finally, skip counting is an excellent skill for the students to learn. It helps the students to become familiar with the products that they see in a certain times table. Oftentimes in the younger grades, the students are taught how to count by 2s, 5s, or 10s, as these are simple numbers for the students to count. But take it to the next level. Have your class count by 3s, 4s, 6s, or 7s. When the students become familiar with counting 7, 14, 21, 28, then when they get to the multiplication facts, the products of the facts will be much more familiar to them, and it will help them to feel more confident with the answers that they get. The students need to understand the math before they can master the facts. If they just have facts memorized without meaning, it won't take it to the next level where they truly understand what multiplication is. Again, learning the multiplication facts is a process and not just something that can be done overnight. Even once you've built these foundational skills, you need to make sure that you introduce the facts in a timely and well thought out manner. So introducing the facts should be done very strategically. Only focus on one times table at a time. Yes, we know that certain times tables are easier for the students to learn than others, and it's quite all right to teach them the 1s, 2s, 5s first, as these are facts they will often encounter. But again, only focus on one times table at a time. This breaks the material into a smaller amount for the students so they can feel more confident and grasp smaller amounts of material at a time. Next, Practice, practice, practice. This is not something that can be done overnight. It takes time, and that's okay. Oftentimes, when teaching multiplication facts, sometimes the book only has one lesson on a certain times table. And that's okay, because our job as teachers is to go beyond the book. The textbook may provide us a place to start, but it is not our only resource. Again, it's just one resource, and there are many resources out there. So, one times table at a time is going to take time for the students to practice. So find various resources that you can have. Find different activities for all students. As we know, no two students learn the same way. So it's important to make sure that we find hands-on activities, written activities, memorization activities. You can use songs, poems, counters, whiteboards, different things, but keep practicing the facts. Even if you've moved on to a different math unit and you're teaching geometry, still incorporate math fact practice into the daily lessons. This gives the students a chance to brush up on their skills and to become more fluent in their math facts every day. At the same time, when learning the math facts, they're not something that should be learned in isolation. Incorporate problem solving into the lesson. For example, if you're learning the 4 times table, ask the students to think, if you have 5 kittens playing in a room, how many paws are there in the room? This requires the students to think that each kitten has 4 paws, and if there are 5 kittens, 5 times 4 is 20. It gives them a real-world application so they can see that multiplication can be found in the world and that it's not just something we see in a math fact. When you introduce the facts, make sure that you show the students, again, relating back to that skip counting. If you're introducing the 4 times table, have the students count by 4s. This helps them to become familiar with the pattern and allows them to break the 4 times table into groups of 4 and see the pattern of the numbers. But not all the times tables are as easy as each other. So sometimes we have some challenging times tables, and helping your students see that there's a way to figure out the challenging facts is very important, because sometimes the cool ways or tricks for learning the more difficult times table is what the students need to hear. Now, this might not work for everyone, but it's a strategy that could work for some students. So it's important to remember these so you can help those students that would benefit from this trick. For example, for the 6s, think of the 5s fact and just add one more group of the number. For the 9s, think of the 10s fact and subtract one group of the number. As we know, the 5s facts and the 10s facts are pretty easy for the students to learn when first learning multiplication. So this can give the students time to learn the more difficult facts, like the 6s and the 9s, if they have a way to help them get to the product in the beginning. And for the 12s, think of it as a 10s times the number plus 2 times the number. This, added together, gives you the answer. So for example, if you had 12 times 4, think of it as 10 times 4, which is 40, plus 2 times 4, which is 8. 40 plus 8 equals 48. Another thing you can do with the 12s is sometimes when you put it in terms of dozens, the students are able to think of it that way. If, for example, they've bought something in a dozen before and had to figure out the number. Making these little connections, these are the tricks the students will remember. These are the tips that will help them feel like they are mathematicians and help them to understand that multiplication, again, is just a quicker way of addition and that they can multiply. It just takes time. So what can you do to help your students practice their math facts? I found that with my students, finding a variety of ways to practice math facts allows them to see that it's new and exciting each time. It keeps them engaged in the lesson and wanting to practice because the games are new, the activities are new, so they haven't gotten sick of doing the same old routine. Some activities that I found often work are multiplication memory, where you have half the cards with math facts on them and half of them with the products. The students turn 2 cards over. If it is a fact with a matching product, then they get to keep the pair. If not, then what they do is they say the product of the fact that they turned over as well as a math fact that equals the product they turned over to help them practicing their math facts along the way. You can have the students roll dice and multiply the numbers together. Now, as we know, a 6-sided die only goes up to 6, but you can change the numbers on the side to make them practice the harder math facts. You can rewrite the numbers so that they have 7s, 8s, and 9s, giving the students more options in the math multiplication facts that they roll. Flip 2 playing cards and multiply. This gives the students something different than flashcards because they are picking the 2 numbers and they don't know the order. But again, it's a simple way for them to practice multiplying. You could play I Have Who Has game, where the students have the product to the previous math fact and then ask who has the product for the math fact they ask. This keeps the class engaged and playing as a whole group so that the students can all be benefiting from the math fact instruction. Multiplication Scoot is another activity that I found to be very useful with students practicing their math facts. It involves having various cards with multiplication facts on them placed around this room. The students then have an answer sheet to record their answers so that they can go around, solve the math fact, and find what the product is. At the end, we take the cards down together and review them as a class. Finally, practicing math facts is a great way to incorporate technology into your lesson. There are many wonderful multiplication apps out there, and they're one place that you can get started so the students can work on whatever math facts and multiplication times tables they're having difficulty with at their level. And they're often done in a fun and engaging way with timers, music, great visuals, and an exciting storyline to keep them entertained. So these are just a few of the ways that I have found to help students practice their multiplication facts. Again, building a strong foundation in multiplication is key because, as we know, after they've learned the basic facts, it's just going to build upon that. So making sure they have the strong foundation will give them the confidence they need to learn the more challenging task of multiplying larger numbers. Or later on in algebra and pre-algebra, solving multi-step equations will be much easier when those multiplication facts are automatically in their memory and it's something that they can do fluently. So make sure to take the time to build their multiplication facts. But again, keep the students engaged and keep them confident in their learning, remembering that they are all mathematicians and the way we learn our multiplication facts is not the same for any 2 students. So be patient and find many resources that works with each student so they can feel confident in their math today, tomorrow, and in the future.